One more. A significant inspiration for this book, You Are Not Your Own, Belonging to God in an Inhuman World, was my encounters with what I want to call artifacts of indignity. And these are examples of the billion little ways that contemporary society is inhuman. Today, I want to look at this artifact. It's the kind of thing that inspired me. And it popped up in my Instagram feed. I didn't ask for it. I don't follow Dave Ramsey. It was sponsored. It appeared. And I think it's a good opportunity to think through some ideas. So I want to ask, what's wrong with this image? What does it tell us about society, and how does it relate to my book? You Are Not Your Own, to recap, argues that our contemporary society is fundamentally an inhuman environment because it's not designed for humans as we actually are, for the way God made us. Specifically, our society assumes that we are only ever our own and we belong to ourselves. As I discuss in the book, one thing that makes our environment inhuman is the dominance of something called technique. And I think it's virtually in every aspect of our lives. In his 1954 book, The Technological Society, Jacques Ellul defines technique as this. He calls it the totality of methods rationally arrived at and having absolute efficiency for a given stage of development in every field of human activity. Under a society governed by technique, what we find is that the highest value turns out to be efficiency. Since we are our own, it's actually very difficult for us to agree on moral standards. You might have noticed this about our society. We don't have a lot of agreement on morality, except efficiency. Because the thing about efficiency is it relies on numbers and measurement, which is a lot easier to negotiate. So, for example, we might not be able to agree on our collective responsibility to deal with homelessness in our city. But we probably can agree that whatever our city does, whatever policies or procedures they set in place, they need to be the most cost-effective methods available. We demand best practices everywhere in our lives. That's an example of technique. Here I want to read a brief passage from the book, slightly adapted for time's sake, that I think is going to help explain technique, but also connect us back to Dave Ramsey. An interesting example of technique can be found, I think, in the field of leadership. Why is it that leaders are encouraged to care for, think about this, why are they encouraged to care for the well-being of their employees? Why is it that experts will recommend allowing workers regular breaks? Well, it turns out treating workers well usually increases productivity. Note here that the method of management appears on the surface to be motivated by a value higher than efficiency, the welfare of fellow human beings. If workers are taking regular coffee breaks, then they'll have less time to work. So it seems like by management saying, okay, you can take a 15-minute break every 2 hours or so, it seems like the management is sacrificing productivity for the good of their employees. But that's not really the way it works. The rationale for giving breaks tends to be not that it's good for them as persons, as human persons. And it's not that it's immoral to overwork people made in the image of God. Those aren't the reasons. Far from it. Kindness, respect, and love end up becoming utilitarian means to maximize efficiency. Remarkably, this happens all out in the open. No leader hides the fact that efficiency, not charity or humanity, motivates his or her policies. On the contrary, it's actually really common to hear management announce their motives. So we can imagine a business, announcing publicly, here at Work Corp, we value our employees and their families. Employees who are satisfied with their home lives are 4 times as productive as those who are dissatisfied. That is why we are thrilled to begin offering paid family leave. You hear things like this all the time. It should seem odd to us that managers can openly admit to treating their employees humanely purely because it increases, or primarily at least, because it increases profits, which is efficiency. And this should trouble us because it raises the question, what happens when a policy that is good for employees actually isn't profitable for the company, which turns out to be the case quite often. And yet, we've become so deeply committed to technique, to the value of efficiency as a society, that none of us are fazed by statements like this. In fact, knowing that paid family leave will increase a company's profits will probably make some employees feel less guilty when they take off that paid family leave, right? When they take advantage of it. They think, well, it's okay for me to take off a few weeks to care for my newborn child because this will actually make me a better employee. So I don't need to feel guilty about this. Now, that excerpt from the book brings us to this advertisement. On the one hand, Dave Ramsey, who's a famous Christian money advisor, I don't know what you would call him, a guru, perhaps. He's encouraging employers to help their employees get out of debt. That sounds pretty great. When I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw this, that first line in the image jumped out at me. Help your employees get out of debt. I thought, wow, that's really good. That's a really honorable thing to do. Employers should care about their employees. They should want to help them get out of debt. And then I read the caption. Did you know your employees' money struggles directly impact your bottom line? It's true. This is your chance to make a real difference in their lives. So once we get past this eye-catching image, which presents the idea of helping employees, his first appeal, Ramsey's first appeal, or whoever runs this social media account, the first appeal in the caption is to profits, is to the company's bottom line, is to working more efficiently. What's crazy is that we see statements like this all over the place. This is the norm. Efficiency as a value is so widely accepted, even among Christians, as we see here, that people in leadership can openly say, I'm treating you as a human because it's more efficient, aka profitable, than treating you badly. It's also kind of crazy that the ad doesn't even seem to acknowledge that employers could help their employees get out of debt by, paying them more. It also doesn't raise the question or address the question of how might this employer be contributing to a society of consumption and debt, which helps create the conditions in which their own employees tend to be in debt. Those are sort of deeper questions that are just glossed over. See, if we are not our own, but belong to God, and that's the premise of this book, we are not our own, but belong to God, then we don't get to put efficiency above all other values. It can't go above justice. It can't go above goodness or beauty or love. Efficiency is a fine thing to work toward, but it can't be an ultimate value. And if that's the case, if we are not our own, then it really doesn't matter if it increases our bottom line when we help employees. If it's a good thing to do, then we should just do it. That's it. Now, this is just one small artifact in the big scheme of things, and it's really not important. I could care less about what Dave Ramsey is doing here. But my point is that this is an example of a widespread belief that efficiency is the ultimate good. And a society that practices technique will dehumanize us over and over and over again in little ways that add up and overwhelm us. And that's what this book is about. It's about explaining phenomena like this, understanding how is it that we get overwhelmed by these million little indignities, and trying to offer us a way out, trying to offer us hope.